The thing about silence is that it's never truly silent. There's always something there. The hum of electronics, the whisper of wind, the sound of your own heartbeat. At least that's what I used to think. But after what happened to Dylan Rhodes, I'm not so sure anymore. I should start at the beginning. Dylan was a friend of mine, a musician, and a damn good one. The kind who could make a guitar weep or scream depending on his mood. But that was before the noise got to him. Before silent mode. I'm recording this because people need to know what really happened. The police reports say Dylan Rhodes simply disappeared. Another missing person in a big city. But I know better. I was there. I watched him fade away. Piece by piece. Until there was nothing left but an echo. It started 6 months ago. Dylan had been struggling with anxiety and tinnitus. A constant ringing in his ears that wouldn't go away. The doctors said it was probably from years of playing in small clubs with bad acoustics, but I think it was more than that. The world had gotten too loud for Dylan. Social media notifications, traffic sounds, the endless chatter of coffee shops. It was all becoming unbearable. That's when he found the app. Silent mode. The advertisement was simple. Experience true peace. Download now, it said. The reviews were glowing, almost suspiciously so. People calling it life-changing, revolutionary, a miracle. Dylan showed it to me the day after he downloaded it. I remember how his hands shook with excitement as he demonstrated its features. "Listen to this, Mira," he told me. And just like that, the bustling coffee shop around us became perfectly, impossibly quiet. Not muffled. Not dampened. As if someone had pressed mute on reality itself. I should have known then that something was wrong. Technology doesn't work like that. Sound doesn't just disappear without a trace. But Dylan was so happy, so relieved. For the first time in months, he could think clearly. The ringing in his ears was gone. The changes were subtle at first. Dylan started missing calls, claiming he never heard his phone ring. He'd zone out during conversations, as if he couldn't quite hear what people were saying. But he didn't seem worried. If anything, he seemed more peaceful than ever. Then came the incident at his gig. Dylan was supposed to perform at the basement, a small venue where he'd played hundreds of times before. I was there, watching from the bar. He stepped onto the stage, plugged in his guitar, And nothing. No sound came out. He kept playing, growing more frustrated, but it was like watching a silent film. The sound technician swore everything was working perfectly. Dylan just couldn't produce any sound. That was when he first showed signs of fear. He called me later that night, his voice barely a whisper through the phone. "Mira, something's wrong," he mumbled. "The app. I can't turn it off. The controls are grayed out, and I think it's spreading." I should have taken him more seriously. But how could I? An app that erases sound, that slowly mutes a person's entire existence. It sounded impossible. But then I started noticing things too. Dylan's footsteps stopped making noise when he walked. His clothes didn't rustle. And it wasn't just sound. He seemed to be losing substance somehow. People would bump into him on the street as if they couldn't see him. Baristas would skip over him in line. His texts started showing up as message not delivered. One evening, about a month after he downloaded silent mode, Dylan showed up at my recording studio. He looked different, paler, somehow less defined around the edges, like a photograph that was slightly out of focus. I found others. People who use the app. They're gone now, Mira, he confided me, nervously. Just empty apartments and abandoned cars. But sometimes, if you listen carefully in those places, you can hear whispers. He played me a recording he'd made. Or tried to. The waveform was there on the screen. But when we pressed play, there was nothing. Just dead air. That's when Dylan broke down. Hez was muttering, panicking. It's not just muting sound. It's muting us. Our whole existence. And I think I'm next. We spent the next week trying to find a way to stop it. We traced the app's origin to a defunct tech startup called Quietude Technologies. Their website was still up, but the contact information led nowhere. The company address was an empty lot. The developers seemed to have vanished. Dylan's condition worsened rapidly. His reflection started lagging behind in mirrors. Security cameras couldn't detect him. Even I began having trouble focusing on him. My eyes would slide off him as if he was made of smoke. The last time I saw Dylan clearly was in my studio. He insisted on recording one final song, something to prove he existed. I'll never forget how he looked that night, almost transparent under the studio lights, his fingers moving across the guitar strings with desperate intensity. For 3 hours, he played. I watched the meters on my mixing board register the sound, watched the waveforms appear on my computer screen, gap 2S. But when we played it back, silence. Complete and absolute silence. Dylan stared at the speakers for a long time. Then he turned to me, and I saw real terror in his increasingly transparent face. His voice, a weak whistle, said, "Mira, I can't hear my heartbeat anymore." What happened next still haunts me. Dylan pulled out his phone, the screen showing silent mode's interface. All controls still grayed out except for one message. Silence achieved. In a final act of desperation, Dylan smashed the phone against the wall. The screen shattered, and for a split second, I heard something. A sound like 1,000 voices screaming in perfect silence. Then Dylan changed. His body became like static on an old TV, flickering, dispersing. I reached for him, but my hand passed through where he should have been. The last thing I saw was his mouth moving, trying to say something. Then he was gone. The police found nothing. No body. No evidence of foul play. Just an empty studio and a broken phone that wouldn't turn on. They classified it as a missing person case. But how do you file a missing person report for someone who slowly faded from existence? I tried to warn people about silent mode, but the app had vanished from all app stores. No record of it ever existing. The only proof I have is this recording and the strange things that happen in my studio late at night. Sometimes, when I'm alone here, I hear things. Not quite sounds. More like the memory of sounds. A guitar string being plucked. A familiar melody. And sometimes, just sometimes, I think I see movement in the studio monitors. A reflection that shouldn't be there. A shadow without a source. Last week, I found something on my mixing board. A new audio file. Created at 3:27 a.m. when the studio was empty. It's just 30 seconds of silence. But the waveform
911, what's your
The
emergency?
waveform looks exactly like Dylan's voice saying, "I'm still here." So if you're watching this, consider it a warning. The next time you see an app promising perfect silence, perfect peace, remember Dylan Rhodes. Remember that true silence isn't empty. It's waiting.